The television news has reported that the United States is under a severe heat wave. More than 100 million people will be affected by this climate issue. This suggests a fairly common medical malady that you, as a workers' compensation adjuster and the workers' compensation in general, will have to deal with. I wanted to take this time to share with you that there are basic three types of heat injuries that you, as the workers' compensation professional, must be aware of. First is heat cramps. Second, heat exhaustion. And third, and most notably the most severe, heat stroke. As you know, your body produces sweat to compensate for increased temperatures. Sweating and evaporation cools the skin and cools your body. Under ideal situations, you have enough fluid on board and enough breeze for the evaporation to take effect. However, there are some occasions when your heat will rise so much and the amount of evaporation cannot accommodate that, and there simply is not enough water to be turned into sweat to allow for that heat injury. With respect to heat injuries, the first sign is heat cramps. This is fairly straightforward. Your muscles cramp up, also known as Charlie horse, and these can become quite painful. I want you to know that such cramps can occur not only at the time of injury, but also several hours after the injury occurred. That alone makes issues of compensability forefront in your mind. The good news is that with appropriate fluid replacement, appropriate salt replacement, and coolness, then you should do well. Replacement of such salts such as potassium, eating a banana, things like that, will help your body because potassium is a salt that's lost during the sweating and evaporation process. And from personal experience, I can tell you that keeping a cool jar of pickle juice, which is now available commercially, in the refrigerator, have the cramps, swallow that down, and it's astonishing how quickly those cramps will resolve. The second level of heat injury is noted as heat exhaustion. Heat exhaustion is a little bit more severe, a little bit more problematic. This can occur when there is an extended period of high temperature and your body's core temperature elevates and it's not happy. Things go south. So then when there's not enough water to be consumed, and I'm going to focus on water because certain beverages, which are noted to be diuretics, can make this worse. People think that drinking alcohol, having a cold beer, is going to make that fluid situation better. Just the opposite. Too much alcohol has a diuretic effect, and you're dropping more water through the urinary system, and your body really needs to retain that water. Other fluids like coffee have a similar effect. Again, it's free water that we want in our systems to help us cool down. One of the major differences between the first and second level of heat injuries is the neurologic effect. In the second level, you might experience nausea, dizziness, weakness, irritability, heavy sweating even, profusely sweating. It's astonishing how you turn on the faucets, if you will, and then a marked elevated core temperature. You can just feel their skin just feels so warm. Their bodies feel so warm. The skin may feel hot and dry to touch, or, as I mentioned a moment ago, profuse sweating may be here. This is a clinical emergency. Have your people call 911 and get that person evacuated, get the IV started, get them in the proper situation so that the body temperature can be cooled off before there's any significant damage. The third and most severe clinical situation is what we call heat stroke. The body's core temperature rises rapidly, the sweating mechanism fails, and the body is unable to cool itself to appropriate levels. In this situation, you'll see confusion, altered mental status, right up to slurred speech and loss of consciousness. Whoa, this is a significant heat injury. The purpose of this little chat is to let you know that from a workers' compensation perspective, there are several professional issues that you must be aware of. Beyond the initial recovery, complications from any heat injury, and from the earliest, easiest ones to the most severe, can be extensive. Everyone's body system is a little bit different. The body chemistries are different. This person's on certain medications that reduces fluid levels, or for some reason they're dumping salts and they can't respond. The neurologic system issues we talked about, and then there could be pay particular attention because with the heat injuries, you can have injuries to the liver, the heart, kidneys, and muscles. With respect to the kidneys, obviously with not enough fluid, the kidneys can't function and you get an acute kidney injury or kidney failure. Most often that can be recovered and the kidney does reasonably well. However, it can be severe enough so that you might need a kidney transplant. Look out. Additionally, liver issues can occur. The electrolyte imbalance and the fluid insufficiency really can compromise liver function to the point of liver failure. When you drop a lot of fluid in the body system, you get what's called either a hyponatremia, too little salt, or hyperkalemia, too much potassium. Again, the body is always attempting to modify the salt contents and all these other issues to maintain a perfect flow. But with losing the fluid, having excessive heat, all these get compromised, and the long-term effects are easily associated with this particular event. In addition, there is a little-known complication called diffuse intravascular coagulation. Candidly, that means your blood clots within the small vessels. These little blood clots go to a smaller vessel, they'll occlude that vessel, and all of a sudden, that area where the blood flow goes is not receiving the oxygen it needs from the blood cells, not receiving the fluid it needs, and those tissues begin to die. So DIC is another significant complication that you need to be aware of. Additionally, rhabdomyolysis. This is where the muscles really start to eat themselves, the muscle fibers die, and this can be a generalized situation. Overall functionality of the muscles is compromised, and that, as you can imagine, becomes a significant event. So for you, the workers' compensation professional, what are you to do? First and foremost, make sure your clients are counseled as the appropriateness of having more than enough fluid, copious amounts. In a hot weather situation such as we're having here, as you can see, bright sunshine, no breeze, it can get hot. And in that situation, you cannot have too much water. Even individuals who are just marginally exposed. These 6 guys, no problem whatsoever, but that guy over there who happens to be obese or a tiny little guy, whatever it is, his scenario is different, which would compromise the clinical situation and cause a significant and very expensive heat injury. Everyone's body's chemistry is different. We all know that. The fluid levels change. This person's on what medication or has heart disease, and he's limited to his fluid intake. There's a large number of tangent situations that make this difficult situation all that much worse. So from your perspective, you must be cognizant of the short term, the heat injury itself, and the long-term effects of even a marginal heat injury. Be aware that if somebody rolls up with a heat injury and their laboratory studies note kidney failure, hyperkalemia, or whatever, boy, that's going to be part that's easily assignable to that kidney injury. Getting this individual, so when you first get this individual, get a detailed past medical history. Find out what's going on. Note the weather at the time of the injury. You know, we have the internet, and we can tell us exactly the temperature of, First Street and Main Avenue at 12 o'clock noon where this injury occurred. Where's that affect? You want to know the weather at the time of injury, the activities that the individual was pursuing as part of his occupational endeavor, and if there was a safe work environment relative to heat injuries. You want to note the findings reported by the local healthcare provider, the first guy who saw the injured worker. You want to know what the ambulance, if the person was evacuated, what the ambulance crew documented in their notes. Did they give saline? Did they give free water? Well, how did they treat this? And then, of course, the findings noted at the emergency department, they are actually excellently trained in assessing heat injuries. The bottom takeaway is you have to know that heat injuries are not a clinical situation that are to be trifled with. It needs to happen, it needs to be taken care of, and there are significant complications that could occur.